Well, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome in from across the continent today for another exciting Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants broadcast. If you're joining us for the first time, which I know a lot of you are today, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. Now, everything we do goes to our YouTube channel, so if you want to check out this program or one of over 3,000 others, they're all right there. Lots to explore and discover on pretty much any science and nature topic imaginable. Now, today we are really excited because we are getting underway with something I've long been excited in the planning of, which is a live stream from a live stream. We are partnering with the River Institute and the National Film Board of Canada to go on a little journey with the River Institute team to explore our Rotary Creek and to see some of the amazing wildlife they have there, learn about the history of this really special area, and in general, learn about what conservation looks like on the ground in cities. So without further ado, I'm going to turn you over to the team there. Thank you so much for joining us, River Institute folks, and take us away.
All right, well, it's great to be here, and it's great to hear we've got schools from all over the continent. I'm standing here on the shore of the St. Lawrence River in downtown Cornwall, and the background noise is a street sweeper. So we're going to be looking at a creek that was built right in the middle of Cornwall, right in the middle of the town. And it's a town of about 50,000 people on the St. Lawrence River. And I know we have people from all over the place. I heard Jesse mention Tennessee, far away from the Great Lakes. So if you're not familiar with the Great Lakes St. Lawrence ecosystem, in the middle of North America, we have these 5 huge Great Lakes. And all of those Great Lakes drain into the St. Lawrence River ultimately, and that water flows east, and it ends out in the Atlantic Ocean near the Canadian province of Prince Edward Island and the Gulf of the St. Lawrence. And this ecosystem, the Great Lakes and the St. Lawrence River that connects it to the ocean, is representing about 20% of the entire planet's freshwater supply and about 80% of North America's freshwater supply. So it's a really important ecosystem, and it's also subject to all sorts of human pressures because many of the American and Canadian big cities like Detroit and Toronto are located right on the shores of this ecosystem. A lot of the creeks that feed into the Great Lakes and the St. Lawrence River, including any that were in this area near Cornwall, Ontario, have been paved over, filled in, built on top of. And so we tried to recreate some of the historical habitat. So the creek you're about to see, about 25 years ago when I started my career and was involved in building this creek, looked like the mowed lawn just over to my right. And Zach, our camera person, is going to show you what this creek looked like. So we're going to walk down now to the mouth of the creek where the creek joins the St. Lawrence River, and we're going to join some of my crew, and they're out there catching fish. We're using this creek as an experimental creek to learn about how fish colonize new habitats, how fish species and communities change over time in response to climate change. So this program's about fish ecology, it's about stream ecology, but it's also about what it's like to be a biologist. I hope many of you in classes now are picking courses, you're thinking about careers down the road when you're finished school, and this is one option. It's not for everyone, but most of my crew, I think, agrees that we have pretty sweet jobs. We get to do this every day. Sometimes we get students like you joining us. Sometimes we're just on our own. So follow me and we'll meet some of my coworkers here. And if they've been doing a good job, they may already have some fish in the net for us, or they may be set to go and catch fish. And if they haven't yet caught any, I'm going to jump right in the water and join them. So where are you guys at? Are you just about to chase the fish down? Yep. All right, so this net that you see these coworkers of mine holding here is called a seine net. And because this creek is very small, it's not it's not a long distance from one bank to the other. We're just going to set the net across the creek here, and I'm going to join my coworkers up here, and we're going to splash our way down. And in the process of splashing our way down, we're going to try to flush any fish that are in the creek right into the net. So I'm going to let you ladies start up there, and I'm going to join in right here because I don't want to get too far away from Zach, who's trying to keep me on camera, and I'm already making it a challenge for him. So we're just going to splash and kick and disturb the fish and chase them into the river. I think I saw a few going, and then we're going to pick up the. Oh, and we got a few. There we go. So let's make a pocket, but keep the fish in the net. And let's go a little closer so Zach can make his way down and he can get a good look. So let's bring the bucket over here. All right, so we got lots of fish. And if you're, I'm going to just grab one. We'll give you a better look at this. So this is the species we've caught. If any of you know your fish, your freshwater fish, you can try to guess what we might have here. And I'll let you know if you're right in a few minutes. And our camera, we've switched camera people, and Alana is now coming in for a close-up of the fish because she's wearing waders. So that's the fish.
I can't believe you caught this many fish in that little thing. That's wild.
Yeah. So this is a really important fish locally. This fish is called a yellow perch. It's a common freshwater fish in the Great Lakes and throughout all of Ontario's small lakes. And this species extends through much of eastern North America. It's a really important fish culturally. Many people in this part of the world rely on this as a food source. And if you go to any restaurant, perch is always on the menu in the Cornwall and surrounding area. So I'm going to take this bucket over here, and we're going to transfer these to another pail, and we're going to bring this up to the gazebo where I first introduced myself, and we're going to take some basic measurements.
Brian, Emma has a surprise bycatch as well.
What's that?
Emma has surprise bycatch.
Oh, look what we also have here. So we've got a little painted turtle.
Wow.
I'm going to let you guys take over this.
Yep.
So yeah, show them the painted turtle.
Hello.
Was that in the net or was that on the way? So we have a little tiny painted turtle. So this is our most common turtle in this part of Ontario. We have, I think, about 8 different turtle species. That's just a rough guess. That's our most common one. We can. That's another potential topic for a live stream. All right, so I'm going to follow these guys. You can head up to where the balance is. So what we do when we catch fish is we identify them, we record how many we catch in the net, and then we usually take the mass of the fish, we weigh the fish, and we measure the length of the fish. And that helps us do a number of things. It helps us to keep track of changing growth rates as climates warm, metabolism speeds up, food sources change. Some food sources become more abundant, some become less abundant, and that changes growth rates of fish. And so that's one of the things we can use this kind of data for. It also allows us to determine whether fish are, whether population structure is changing. So are we losing young fish? Are we losing the old fish? Maybe because of overfishing. So my crew's going to bring this up, the fish up here to our weighing and measuring station. We also have these little fish viewers so we can get an even better look at one of these perch. So I'm just going to grab one perch, and then the rest of you can get down to work weighing and measuring these. So that's the yellow perch. That's one of our most important local species. It's also a great one for young people who are getting into fishing because they're really easy to fish for. You don't need a boat. You don't need fancy gear. You just need an old-fashioned stick and a piece of line and a hook and a worm on the end of it. Now, before you students joined us, my crew was busy, and they caught a few other species here. They caught a number of different species of minnow. Now, a lot of people think minnow is just a word that means small fish, but minnows, the word minnow means the fish are in a particular fish family called the minnows. And some minnows are actually quite large, and some small fish are not minnows. So these are minnows, and what distinguishes a minnow is it has a single dorsal fin. So many fish have two dorsal fins. Olivier, can you grab a viewer with a perch, and I'll show the difference. So these minnows have a single dorsal fin. Dorsal means the fin on the back, and it's a soft fin, so it's not spiny. And in contrast, I just dropped the fish, so I'm gonna jump down here and put it back in the water. So if you compare that to this fish, and these fins should show up a little better. So you can see the yellow perch has two different dorsal fins. The front one is pointy and spiky, and you can stab yourself with these spines, and it actually hurts a little bit. And then the rear one is softer. So that's characteristic of the perch family, including this species, the yellow perch. We have some other fish in here, if I can grab one, that most people, if they catch one of these, would probably call it a minnow because it's a small fish, but it's not a minnow. This is a fish called a killifish, and killifish are common in Ontario and many other parts of North America. So they look a little bit minnow-like. They also have a single soft dorsal fin. What's unique about this, and it's probably too small to show up, is if you're face-to-face with one of these, their mouths point up towards the sky. So they're feeding near the top of the water, and they're picking things right off the surface, insects and other things that are sitting right on the surface of the water. So they're called top minnows because they feed on the top of the water. So I'm going to leave this crew, and we're going to go explore a little bit more of this creek. And we're going to meet another crew. I have another crew catching fish further up the creek, and we'll see what they are catching, see if they're catching anything different.
This is actually a question we just got, Brian, about how big your crew is. It seems like a very large team you have out there. What's the deal?
Yeah, so that's because I stole every biologist from every other crew whose manager would let me steal them for the day. So my crew, I'm part of a crew that does education and research, and the two people who are with me right now, Alana and Christina, they are the core of my crew. We have one other, Olivier, who you might have seen me refer to earlier. That's the education crew. But we also have another crew that specializes on fish. We recruited all of them. We recruited a few people from Dr. Courtney Holden, who's an eel biologist and fish biologist. We stole her crew as well. So we've never done a live stream this big, so we wanted to make sure we have all hands on deck. And so although we have different departments at the River Institute, we all try to work together for big events like this. So yeah, we have a big crew here today. I didn't even count them, but I'm sure we have at least 10 people.
Amazing. Well, we appreciate the effort and excited for the next section of this whole thing too. And by the way, while you're walking along, I'll note for our YouTubers, if you guys want to chime in with questions at any point, we're going to have a big long Q&A at the end. Our live class, get ready for questions when we dive in at the end too. And yeah, until then, we're just going to keep exploring this beautiful area on a lovely day.
So one of the real surprises when I helped create this habitat was one of the first fish to move in was actually Chinook salmon. So we have a spectacular Chinook spawning run here in the fall. So most fish, or at least many fish, spawn in the spring, but Chinook salmon spawn in the fall. So every October we get I wouldn't say a huge run, but we get dozens of Chinook salmon coming here to spawn. And so it's quite a spectacle for locals. And because it's right downtown, it's a great opportunity to get local city people who might not do a lot of outdoor exploring to come by and watch something that's not only spectacular, but easy to see. So I spend a lot of my fall doing just sort of random, spontaneous nature interpretation events like I'm doing now, just random people who happen to wander by. And I think we're too early to catch these today. If we do this later in the summer, we catch a species that excites me even more called the cutlet minnow. And this area we're coming to now is where they tend to spawn. And the crazy thing about cutlet minnow is people who live in this part of the world think, everything exciting and exotic lives somewhere else. Well, we have this tiny minnow that it's called the cutlet minnow because its bottom lip, its lower lip, has these three weird paddle-shaped lobes. Looks a little bit like clubs on a deck of playing card. And it uses those three paddles of its lower lip to take rocks with the three lobes, like my three fingers, and it pins the rock up against its upper lip, and it uses that to carry rocks that are quite large compared to the size of the minnow. And the minnow's about this big, that would be a really large one, and they make these giant nests carrying dozens, probably hundreds of these stones. And then unusual for minnows, the males actually take care of the babies after they hatch. Most fish just spawn and leave. The males guard the nests, they guard the young after the young hatch. And because it has a lip that's designed for picking up round pebbles like this, it also happens to have figured out that it can also use that as a defensive weapons. When predators attack cutlet minnows, they defend themselves by ripping the eyeball right out of the predator. So unsuspecting predators get a big surprise. So to me, that just sounds crazy for this part of the world. It sounds like something you read about somewhere else, like the Amazon. And I'm by training a behavioral ecologist. So what I really like are strange behaviors and strange species like this cutlet minnow. The other thing that's really unique about this creek is it's got the biggest documented population of this cutlet minnow species that I know of in Ontario. And in Canada, in all of Canada, we only get cutlet minnow in Eastern Ontario, where Cornwall is located, and a small portion of Quebec, which is the province immediately to the east of Ontario. So let's come down here. So while I was talking, my crew, my coworkers here were out trying to catch another haul of fish. And they definitely got some more perch. We'll see if they got anything else. I'm going to try to slip down into the water here. Lots more perch. So here's a nice big one that'll be easy to see on the camera. So there's that first spiny dorsal fin, and here's the second softer dorsal fin. And that's probably an average size adult perch. So this creek, one of the things we're doing right now, this creek, as I said earlier, was just a mowed lawn right here 25 years ago, approximately, when I helped to build this creek. And over time, a lot of those small pieces of gravel, like the one I showed you that the cutlet minnows use, have become silted over or washed down the creek. So last summer, we started a little bit of a rejuvenation project here where we added several truckloads of fresh gravel. And we're also working on some invasive species removal. So I'm anxious this spring to see whether the number of cutlet minnow nests increases and whether the population of young cutlet minnows increase in the fall. The other thing we're doing is we're trying to control some invasive species. You'll see this on the way back to the station where we started, and I'll get Zach to pan over there. We've removed a whole bunch of an invasive grass called Phragmites. That's the Latin genus name. In different parts of North America, people use different common names like giant reed grass. And it's gotten into many wetlands in this part of the world, in Eastern Ontario and Eastern Canada, really. And probably the situation is the same through much of the Eastern United States. And the reason why it's so invasive, or the reason it got here, is road crews intentionally planted it along the shoulders of many highways in Ontario, and the story is similar elsewhere, because it's a native salt marsh grass. It doesn't require salt water, but it can tolerate salt water. So when we salt our roads in parts of the continent where we have winter, in places like Tennessee, you might not have to worry about that so much, but in Ontario and Quebec and the northern US, we have to salt our roads to keep them safe. So this salt marsh grass could tolerate the road salt. Unfortunately, it escaped from the areas where it was planted along roadsides, and it's getting into many of our wetlands. And it's a really invasive and adaptable plant. It can live in shallow water. It can live in drier areas beside water. And so you find it in fields, you find it in wetlands. And in some parts last summer, this creek was starting to become completely choked off by this grass. So as I'm walking by here, on my right, you can see some bare soil. This was all full of this Phragmites. Here's a few little strands. All of that bare soil was more of this invasive grass. So we removed it all, and we've planted some native vegetation, and we're hoping we can keep the Phragmites at bay while these native plants get a foothold.
By the way, I just want to note for our audience, live YouTube, watching 2 years down the road, like, we do a lot of programs where we're walking around outside. That the number of animals we've got in this and the amount of ground we've covered are like unprecedented in our history, and we've done like 3,500 programs. So this is very, very
There's
fun.
a red-winged blackbird right behind Zach. Sorry, Jesse. I just wanted to get a shot of that because I'm going to talk about this. So continue your thought there, Jesse.
No, that's it. Take us away. Go head back to our creature. What do we got?
So notice that red-winged blackbird. You can't really see the red patch on this blackbird. So blackbirds have, so first of all, this is a red-winged blackbird. Only the males have the black body and the red wing patch. And right now you can't really see the red wing patch. You just see a yellow stripe. And the ability of that bird to cover the patch is really important. So exactly how these details work in the minds of red-winged blackbirds, we don't know, but the size and the quality, maybe the brightness of the red patch, tells other males where that bird ranks in the hierarchy, and they defend territories, and the most vigorous, the highest quality males attract the largest number of nesting females on their territories. And the red patch is a communication signal between males and females, but also among males. And males can recognize that's a bird that I have no chance of taking in a fight. He's a way superior male, and leaves it alone. Or it might decide, yeah, I think I might be able to take them. We're evenly matched, and then they battle it out, and the winner takes over the territory or expands his territory boundary. But it's really important that they can cover that patch. So this bird can just move some black feathers out of the way to expose the red, or it can cover the red and just show the yellow. So right now, that bird is signaling to a neighboring territorial male, you don't have to get excited. I'm not here for a fight. I'm just doing a little bit of feeding on the edge of our territory. If it can't cover the red, other males will perceive that as a threat, and he'll spend all of his time defending males. If you artificially make his patch smaller, then all the birds think, oh, I can take this one. Look at the size of that tiny little patch. This isn't a highly ranked male. And once again, it really is a strong, vigorous male. It can win the battle, but it spends all of its energy fighting all these little upstarts, and it never gets any time to feed or take care of its territory, take care of its females that have settled on its territory. So really sophisticated and complicated patch. If you make the male's patch extra bright, then all of the other highly ranked males just want to displace it, and same thing happens. It spends all of its time fighting.
I've got to say, you talked about being a behavioral ecologist by background, which is my background too, before the SciComm world. And so talking about this sort of thing is fantastic. We do have a question from our live class, or our 8A crew. I'm going to bring you guys in and say hi, by the way, as we're doing this. They wanted to know about the cutlet minnow and if it's in Northern Ontario as well, where they can be found across the range.
No, so sadly, if you're from Northern Ontario, you're out of luck. So in Canada, if you look at a map of Ontario, there's a little triangle that comes into the eastern part of Ontario where it borders Quebec. It's just found along the St. Lawrence River in that little triangle near the Quebec border. It's found from about halfway between Lake Ontario and where we are in Cornwall, and it's found in a little section of the Ottawa River and a few tributaries of the St. Lawrence that are in Quebec. And it is found in the eastern part of the United States. So if you're tuning in from the eastern US, it's much more common there. I don't think it stretches into the west, and I don't think it stretches into the southern US. So in Canada, it's really, if you're not in Cornwall, you don't get to see cutlet minnow except for a couple of little portions of Quebec.
I'm en route. I'm going to get on the plane right now to come see you.
All right, we're usually here, and if I'm not, I'm at my desk, and I'm easily distracted and brought down to this creek because I have a bit of a soft spot for it, having been part of its creation.
Pretty cool. Not many people can say that in the world, which is pretty special.
So the reason we created that creek is if you in the background there's behind me there's a big high ridge, and at the top of that ridge there is a remnant of the old Cornwall Canal that used to carry ships before ships got too big. And Canada and the U.S. jointly built the international seaway that serves the St. Lawrence River now. So there's a remnant of that canal, and it delivers its water into the river by plunging through the remnant of an old concrete powerhouse. If you see the fishing boat in the background over here, that's just in front of that old powerhouse. And so the water spills into the St. Lawrence River by plunging down, I don't know, like 10 meters, 30 feet, maybe more. So fish can't swim up that. Even salmon, known for spectacular upstream swimming ability, can't make it up into the canal. So what we did is we took about a third of the water way up there, just past where we stopped at our second station, and we built this meandering creek, and we tried to make it look and function like a natural creek. These big blocks here beside me, these are remnants of the old Cornwall Canal wall. So there used to be a shipping canal right through the downtown park that Zach showed you at the beginning of today's session. So I'm going to move up back to the aquarium.
Yep. As you're heading there, I'll take a question that we got online, and I'll note our A-Day class. If you have any questions, just let me know if you have them in the chat, and I'll come live to you to bring you in on camera. YouTubers, keep them coming. But one of the questions was, do you have endangered species there? Any endangered species you regularly see in the creek, or even unusually, but occasionally?
Yeah, so we've got a number of species of fish that are maybe not in the endangered category, but certainly threatened. In fact, cutlet minnow is in the kind of the lowest category of the species at risk. So different, because you're from different provinces and states, different jurisdictions do things a little bit differently. So in Ontario, endangered, that's the most critical. And then we have threatened, and then we have species of special concern. So special concern, they're not threatened or endangered yet, but if we don't do the right things, they're going to get there. And so cutlet minnow that I spoke about in Ontario is in that category. We have some others, and the real person to talk about threatened species is Kate. So I'm going to make my way down because I see them with some more fish, and I'm going to introduce Kate. So Kate, we had a question about threatened and endangered fish in this part of the world. So Kate is part of a crew that specializes on documenting the minnow communities and the small fish communities. Most fish biologists historically have focused on the big, exciting, impressive fish like smallmouth bass and muskie and pike. But we wouldn't have any of those if we didn't have the base of the fish food chain, and those are the small fish, including the minnows. So we have a crew here called the FINS crew. FINS stands for Fish Identification in the Near Shore. And so they go into the near shore areas of the river and they document these important fish species at the base of the food web. So Kate, what are some of the threatened and endangered species you guys catch here? So pug-nosed shiner is one that Kate and her crew catches regularly?
Yeah, especially here in the mouth of the creek. It's very highly vegetated. So there's pug-nosed shiners and black chin shiners, which are very sensitive to minnows.
So those are just a couple of examples. Now, in the St. Lawrence River itself, Atlantic salmon, they're completely gone from most areas of the St. Lawrence River. So I guess there's one category more serious than endangered, and that's extirpated. So when something is extinct in a particular area, but it lives elsewhere, further east, for example, in the case of Atlantic salmon, we call it extirpated. So Atlantic salmon is the only native salmon to the St. Lawrence River, and it's gone. But we find it in eastern Canada, where it's probably in serious trouble there, but at least it's still hanging on. So that's a great question.
Well, and I'm so glad you mentioned salmon earlier too, because I grew up in Toronto, and the fact that you could go in the heart of a major city and see salmon running up a stream is still one of the coolest things I've ever had the chance to witness. So I can't encourage you enough. If you're in a major city, see if there's a fish migration, and there'd be lots to sort of enjoy doing so. So it looks like you're going to share a few more things with us, and then we're going to dive in with Q&A for our last 10 minutes here. But if there's anything else you want to wrap us up with, take us away, man.
So I'll just to continue the theme of threatened and endangered species, the other thing we're working on here at the River Institute, and many of the people behind me are part of that FINS crew. They're also working on native mussels. So the Great Lakes and the St. Lawrence River have been invaded by zebra mussels. If you're from this part of the world, you know about zebra mussels. And there's a lot of talk about how they damage equipment and they clog pipes. And that's a pretty human-centric version of their negative effects. To me, the real devastating effect they have isn't about them clogging our pipes, because we could just replace pipes, but they're driving out many of our native clams and mussels. And they do that because zebra mussels attach to anything hard, including the shell of a larger species of clam or mussel. And so we've lost most of our native mussels in this part of the river. And another thing that Kate and the rest of the FINS crew is doing is trying to document where we have remnant populations of some of these rare and threatened clams and mussels. And they're also using some innovative techniques. So they're comparing results we get from field biology like this, where we catch fish and we document them. And they're also comparing that to taking water samples and using water samples to look for fragments of DNA to see whether some species leave fragments of DNA. So maybe we don't catch the fish because they're really good at avoiding our nets, but maybe they leave some fragments of their DNA. So it's a lot like the way they use DNA fingerprinting at crime scenes to see, whether who was the murder suspect and that left the scene. We're trying to see if there are any suspects that left our scene that we weren't able to catch in the net. And that's a new technology that is just being developed, and we're working with some university partners to develop those techniques.
Very cool. eDNA is something we've actually featured quite a bit in Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. I'm so glad we got the chance to reference that. And please do come back to us when you do more research on that. We'd love to actually have you come in and talk about it. We've got a live class in Northern Ontario that I want to bring in for a couple questions if we can. So class 8A is the live class. Come on in, unmute your mic, and you can share those exact two in the chat, but live, because it's more fun that way. Hey.
Hi, some questions from students is, what can people do about salt runoff and affecting waterways and species?
Fantastic.
That's a great question. So one of the things you can do is realize that putting a bucket load of salt in one spot is not an effective way to melt ice. So use the proper amount of salt if you have to use salt, and spread it thinly. Where I work, when I arrive in the wintertime, there's a giant pile of salt in one spot that's really well melted, and there's ice everywhere else. So if you're going to use salt, at least use it properly. Spread it thinly according to the directions. And if you can't, if you can, use something that's less harmful than salt, like sand. Unfortunately, there's this municipalities have to worry about liability, and they'd usually rather oversalt than risk getting sued because someone slipped on the ice. So that's a real hard problem. What we really need to do is just stay home when it's icy.
I love the
rewatch this episode on YouTube and just chill until the ice melts on its own.
Hang out at home. I love the dirt thing too. So I'm in Corner Brook, Newfoundland, which is one of the snowiest cities in Canada, and we use a lot of dirt rather than salt. We do use salt, but when we can, it's dirt, it's sand. It goes a long way to helping protect the habitat here. So great question, guys. We're going to head back to you for that second question, but it's an amazing question. So please do pop back in and ask away. Hey, guys.
So our second question is, are there any projects where biologists work with First Nations to document how the environment or species are changing with climate change?
Wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things I didn't say at the beginning is, so this river, the St. Lawrence River behind me, where this Rotary Creek delivers its water to, is an international border. We're right on the border between Canada and the U.S., Ontario and New York State. And then superimposed on that border is the territory of Akwesasne, the Mohawk territory of Akwesasne. So we're at the junction here of three nations, and we work together regularly. In fact, this wasn't planned, but just before I joined you guys, I ran into a crew of Mohawk biologists, some of whom I taught as students in an environmental technician program here in Cornwall, where I teach part of the time. So yeah, so we see the Mohawks on an almost daily basis. We have a number of different remediation programs and monitoring programs that where we work closely with them.
Unbelievable answer. And I've just put in the chat for our folks too. I'll put this on YouTube in a minute. A great example in the sort of like larger Canada context that you can check out. And again, Ocean School, the National Film Board, has some amazing resources in this. I really encourage you to check out the websites for them and the River Institute to learn even more. Time flies and you're having fun. So we're going to take two more questions before we wrap up together. One was just from a group on YouTube. So Miss Carol's group, they wanted to rehear what species were endangered. When you brought in your colleague, the audio is a little iffy. Can you remember the species that she mentioned that were
Absolutely.
endangered?
So she mentioned pugnose shiner or pugnose minnow, one of those two. I mentioned cutlip minnow. And I don't remember the third one she mentioned. Those are in the St. Lawrence River. I don't know. I don't think we've caught any of these in a long time, so they're probably gone. River red horse is a fish that I think is pretty much gone from this section of the river, but should be in this section of the river. Yeah, so there's a long list, sadly, of fish that are threatened. And actually, really, we have so few people working on threatened species other than the big prestigious ones like polar bears and panda bears. We really don't know the true status of most fish. And that's why that FINS program that Kate and her supervisor, Matt Windle, and many of the people who are behind me, that's why their project is so important.
What a beautiful answer. Brian, you're like some of the best Q&A we've ever had. We're going to head back to 8A for one final question. I just want to do a big thank you to all our audience today from tuning in from, again, we've got Nova Scotia, Arkansas, BC, Tennessee, Ontario, and more. Maryland, it's such a thrill having you all in. So thank you all so much live after the fact, whenever you're watching. We are doing this in French in just a minute as well. So for our classes that want to share this with their colleagues, please do, but we'll wrap up with our 8A crew with one final question. Come on in and take us away. Hey.
So our last question, we've been working for the past month and a half investigating microplastics and how that's affecting water, animals and fish and humans. And our question was just, have you seen, as a biologist, have you seen the effects of microplastics in fish and other species in that environment?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So I haven't worked on that issue myself, but many of my colleagues, including a few at the River Institute, but also some research institutes we work closely with, have been finding microplastics in fish. So yeah, that's definitely an important issue. And what we really need to, so we know microplastics are there in fish. Now what we need to figure out is how detrimental are those plastics? That's the big question. And not all plastics are the same. Most people lump them all together as plastics. It matters what kind of plastics are in these animals, and we really don't know that to any extent yet.
This is guys, we could talk about all these problems all day long. Your questions are spectacular. So 8A, thank you so much for being such a great live class as well today. I just put the amazing National Film Board Ocean Plastic Collection on our YouTube channel as well. And I want to note, for any class that's keen, we've done 50 plus programs on marine plastics. There's a lot of great people that you can check out there in addition to this broadcast, which of course you should share with friends and family immediately when you're done. Now, Brian, before we wrap up, oh, go ahead. I was just going to say.
And we'd love to get feedback from all of you. So I think you're able to see a link or get a link to some feedback forms. So, and also contact me at the St. Lawrence River Institute in Cornwall. If you have any more questions I didn't get to answer, you can go to our website, find my email, and just mention that you were part of this class, and I'll absolutely answer every question.
You are the best. I'm going to get that link to all our registered classes. So if you're waiting for that survey, it'll come to you in an inbox very shortly. Before we wrap up, Ryan, I want to just see if there's any last message you want to leave about the stream, your work, anything to leave off our kids with before we bring them in to say farewell.
Yeah, so I would say it would be great if every one of you can just do, one thing to improve environmental equality. Walk to school or bike to school. Find a way to use less energy. Encourage your parents to use less energy. We have to take charge of climate change and environmental issues ourselves. We can't wait for governments to do it for us.
That is about as good a message as you can get to wrap up. Thank you so much for your time, to the whole team there. I know you're going in French in a minute with my colleague Alex, but have a wonderful day. I'll bring in our 8A crew. Thank you guys so much for joining and your great questions. See you.